Hiya! Welcome to this, my 104th episode, marking 8 solid years of VideoFuzzy. I'm your host, Terry J. Aman, sifting my basket of media memories, and in this installment, titled He Who is Groovy Must Be in My Movie, I call on my friend of the pod, Jesse Zimmerman, to chat about Jack Black and Kyle Gass' 2006 Tenacious D epic, The Pick of Destiny. We also talk Doctor Who finales, I get into the weeds a bit, relaunching my current collection, and celebrating 8 years, interviews. Welcome to the show. He doesn't have that on video, does he? We'll find out together on VideoFuzzy. Yes, Jesse is one of a dozen folks who have shared their spark and energy with the show over the years, so it's not like close to 80 hours of just me the whole time. I thought it'd be fun to look back at some contributions by friends and family chatting about media, and gotta say it was tough to narrow it down all the time, so when we get to that segment, I always reference the episodes the clips are from. You can run them down, hear the whole thing on your own time. And now, VideoFuzzy presents Fuzzy Feature. With that as my focus, putting the Fuzzy Feature together for this one, it only made sense to reach out to include some insights from, gotta say, if you were to characterize Jesse's contributions to this effort over the years, his encyclopedic knowledge of just the broadest range of movies absolutely stands out. I've been thinking about it since I hit upon the idea of doing an interview retrospective for this one in the first place, but damn, when Comedy Central's presentation of the 2006 epic Tenacious D in The Pick of Destiny turned up in my cataloging on disc 1879, I knew I was going to need to involve him. Watching terrible movies. It's the definition of a fantastically terrible movie, a cult classic, and watching it, edited though it might well have been, is such an over-the-top legendary origin story for hell, just Jack Black even, but meeting Kyle Gass and forming the band, the stakes and depths laid in, well, we watched it together best we could over the interwebs, and I think we got into it well enough. Jesse?
What do you know, kiddo?
This ended up being kind of perfect for this, because coming up on the 8th anniversary of VideoFuzzy.
There you go.
So I did something where I went through all of the interview episodes that I'd done. This actually is your 4th appearance on VideoFuzzy.
Good Lord.
Yep.
4. I'm
5.
I'm almost a 5 timers club then. I get a smoking jacket.
Oh, should. There should be something. You should get something. But if there's any justice in this world, well, I mean, that was my out right there. But actually, yeah, because you were also on VideoFuzzy the soundtrack, so
that's right.
You've made many appearances, and you much obliged in every instance. And
every time the crowd went wild. Yeah.
Officially a smattering of applause. No, I just wanted to check in with you because when this turned up in my cataloging, I was like, well, I mean, in terms of movies, it's both fantastic and awful, and it's The Pick of Destiny.
Which I had not seen since it debuted in theater. I think I went to an opening weekend when it originally aired. Yeah.
That is awesome.
I mean, I'm a big fan of Tenacious D, you know. I love the Jack Black and Kyle Gass. So, yeah, we decided to go on opening weekend. And
so you're the one.
I was one of 3. I think there's 3 of us who went and were in the theater and saw this piece of cinema history.
I really do wish that it had done better because watching it now has not just Meatloaf, but a lot of Rocky Horror vibes. I mean, there's a lot of good camp, and the stakes are low.
100%. And I mean, there's no lower stakes available.
Starting a band with your stoner roommate.
This is dollar store stakes is what we have.
And they met, this challenge was met head on. They have the epic quest of, like, a young kid needs to get the hell out of Dodge, climbing out my window, and I'm heading to Hollywood. All of the Hollywoods.
All the Hollywoods.
And
even the Florida one.
Even in that time, aging another 15 years good, which, I mean, yeah, had time to write that, write about his epic quest of his road trip, and then meets Kyle on Buskin.
Ventura Boulevard or
wherever they happen to be.
No.
And they meet up, and he's like, "Oh my God, you're so awesome!" And says, "Yes." Can I be in band with you?
No.
All of the training and the open mic night, and this great chance that they could stay in Hollywood, stay in this crappy apartment, and make rent if they could get to the open mic contest and win with an epic song, but they needed that epic song. And how do you come up with an epic song? You get this guitar pick.
That's right. Used by every guitar legend from the dawn of time.
Yes. And summoning Dave Grohl. No, because we're skipping past the quest, and we mustn't skip past the quest with the Harbinger, Tim Robbins.
Yeah.
You were telling me about Tim Robbins.
Yeah, Tim, he had a theater company out in California, just small little thing with a bunch of people, and there happened to be this young gentleman who worked in that company, and his name was Jack Black. Apparently, Tim had nothing but rave reviews for this kid who could just act circles around everybody else, and it was unbelievable. But you can see what it turned into. I mean, Jack Black is so talented. It's ridiculous.
It is really. I mean, he's incredibly talented guy. He was one of 3 writers for this. Him, Kyle, and they had one other guy.
I know the guy who directed it. He did a bunch of music videos for like Queens of the Stone Age, I think.
I think that he was credited as a writer. They got some good storytelling, I thought, and I thought it moved pretty well. The one part that I think didn't work as well was the divide on their way to the Rock and Roll History Museum. Kyle's going after sex, and Jack's going after rock and roll, and dang it, they're just the split of destiny.
Hose before bros, baby. Hose before bros.
Yes, this line is for rockers only. They realize that they both ended up in the same place.
I mean, it is their destiny. It was written on their asses the whole time.
Oh, it must. I mean, it was
literally written on their asses.
So they get into the museum, the heavily guarded fortress that is the museum.
You know your building is guarded well when it's Fred Armisen is your security guard.
And the other guy's gonna pop a cap in your ass. I've never actually fired a gun
before.
God. And the Guitar Way to Heaven, where the pick of destiny, the titular pick of destiny, actually was pretty well guarded. I mean, I suppose
enter the entrapment ripoff.
Have to get through the maze of lasers. Well, I mean, okay, but again, that allowed Jack to just capitalize on this wonderful physical comedy, which I mean, just really gave him an opportunity to do that, and beating the final obstacle.
I just have to say, the prosthetic budget on this movie was just astronomical.
And the skill set. The skills in presentation is unmatched. How was that for an advert?
It was a dick above the rest.
Indeed. It was a dick of destiny, and we enjoyed. So yes, all of his training pulled into the dick push-ups, led directly to this. It was all the callbacks, and then
the slide.
Oh God, yeah, the power slide out the door, that was fantastic. And the showdown with Tim Robbins on their way back. It's like you can't
come over here so I can stab you.
You can't move. This is a very ableist movie, but they get back and they don't even get on stage. They
No.
don't even get on stage. They were going to the promoter, I guess, the event promoter is out back.
Paul F. Tompkins. Yep.
Promises them that there's still one slot for you, but we don't because in that time they broke the pick of destiny. Oh no!
But then they find all along Satan is in their hearts.
He's in our hearts. It's all along. And then Paul F. transforms into Dave Grohl, into Satan. Can't forget. But it becomes whole again with the pick that was his tooth. And they come out saying, well, we could really still use it. Whoa! And the final showdown, where Kyle may be dragged to hell to be Satan's bitch.
Right.
And
I'm foretold by prophecy.
I cannot decline a rock off, and I've never lost a rock off. So, and then proceeds to rock. I mean, give him his due. I thought I thought he won. I mean, not just because of the multi-instrumentation. I thought that he did a very good job. And
50-foot high Marshall stacks.
Yeah, and they were coming up on it. I mean, they were doing their little intro to whatever it was they were going to end up doing, which, I mean, it kind of felt like they hit a plateau at the end, but then were able to get saved by the bong of destiny, which is Satan's horn, and call back to the Stiller animation, which is returned from whence you came until you are whole again. And that, it's like, no, a little bit of me is in their apartment, now I have to pay their rent. Loopholes. Damn loopholes. But I mean, it's a Jack Black movie. He was going to win.
Well, yeah, of course. Also, we've all heard the song Tribute.
Which, oh yes, it's not the greatest song in the world. It's a tribute to the greatest song.
Tribute.
Fun. I thought it was I thought it was a huge amount of fun. I loved watching it with you. One thing that I was kind of thinking about while we were watching it was you are a person who is like more visual movie theater history and awareness than I am. And I noticed during they were sliding down the Guitar Way to Heaven on the amp. There was like a couple of different editing choices that they made, like where the camera followed them physically, so like for part of the image was actually upside down, and then they cut it together with like a couple of other ways. And I was thinking, you know what, if I were directing this is not how I would do this. I think that I would have included like the domino, the amp domino effect that they did, and then I would have just started at the top of the stairs with them on the amp and just had it like sliding directly towards like maybe a dolly shot, so that it was like the view is moving while we're moving, and they're like they end up like just like their faces smashed up against the camera or whatever. But I mean, yeah,
Sure.
I just felt like
than what it was.
Yeah, I felt like for the way the movie. Now I don't know if maybe they tried that and they didn't like the like everything stopping for a second, but it just kind of felt like, yeah, because what they cut into then is the alarms went off and the guards came running in, and I guess cutting all of that together probably was a little more dynamic, but I don't know. What were your thoughts about that? Those are my thoughts. We're here. We want to hear your thoughts.
They had to, get some sort of, action sequence because, when you're writing, movies, they say every 10 pages or every 10 minutes, you need to have an action beat. So you need to have some sort of movement, some sort of something. So yeah. I think that denouement to the story of them trying to escape with this pick and it definitely needed action. So I think using the different camera angles and stuff like that added more perceived
frenetic.
action than there actually was.
No, I
I think
think
that's what
that's,
they were thinking.
yeah, that makes sense. I felt like this would be a way for like a really epic visual, and like, but I think there were at least 3 different animated sequences in this movie already. They didn't need to cut to another one. And, this, like, yeah, no, get Terry Gilliam on the phone, see what he can do with this nonsense.
Let's go full Brazil.
Oh my God. So, no, that was one. And then I think it's probably better than, Coldplay's comic movie origin. You won't be in a band. Okay, we'll just be in a band. I'll be in your band. Okay, well, okay,
Somebody
fine.
find Chris Martin.
I guess, if we were gonna, and if anyone was going to write this was how Jack Black was gonna write it. So, I mean, it really, I mean, his fingerprints are all over this. I mean, it's just based on like everything, all the comedy I've seen from him.
Yeah, the D is up and in and all around this one.
So I felt like it was fun. It was sort of like a 2005, 2006 kind of area. It was post the Austin Powers nonsense and kind of like around what you were mentioning, Harry Potter. So it was like, it felt like a fun watch. I mean, I would say effortless.
It was right smack dab in the middle of the Judd Apatow comedy boom. So it's right in that, that ilk. That was the comedy movie of the time.
Yeah, and it's kind of surprising that it didn't do better. I mean, are you surprised? I am actually. I'm kind of surprised that this didn't do.
I can't remember. Wow, that had a $20 million budget. What the hell?
Most of that was for pot.
Yeah, I would think so. Opening weekend, November. Oh God, that's why. Because it opened in Christmas season, November 26th, 2006. So that was that holiday movie. That would have been Thanksgiving weekend.
It really felt like it was more of a late summer. Honestly, I would have. Yeah, maybe they were just like timid.
Midwinter, like a February.
Oh yeah, this would have been a bright thing to watch, and that would have been fun. This is
what came out around that time. Stranger Than Fiction came out the 10th of November. Oh, that's why. The week before it was released was Happy Feet. Casino Royale.
Oh, God, it didn't have a chance.
For your consideration, the Polar Express, the Queen. Yeah.
Everyone in that tween teen, demo that was like, this was clearly aimed at.
Yeah, let's see. What debuted the week? The Fountain, Deja Vu with Denzel Washington. I remember when that came out. Deck the Halls with Matthew Broderick and Danny DeVito.
Yeah, it had no hope.
Yeah, it had no chance.
None.
Yeah, it would have been going against Polar Express. It'd be the closest thing to it.
Yeah. And that would be what families were taking their kids to. People were going to be going, This would have been stoner teen, but...
Fast Food Nation came out that weekend too.
Yeah, poor Jack. You feel bad about the unfortunate timing, but it felt like it had like good like cult classic hooks to it, because it had the mushroom sequence, it has like all of the drug references, the fart jokes. It's gonna get some laughs. Yeah.
I mean, there's way better stoner comedies. I mean, Grandma's Boy is probably the ultimate stoner comedy in my opinion. Or if you want to go more mainstream, then you go with Super Troopers or Fear Fest or one of those.
Yeah, this one I thought it was good, but it's not gonna. Yeah, that's not gonna get to cult classic status. And you were, like you said, you got to see it opening weekend, but didn't like a lot of people did not, and like everything else is playing everywhere else. So it's people were seeing it by accident maybe, but it was a lot of fun. I had a good time. I enjoyed watching this with you, and it's good comments while we were watching it. Thank you, Jesse. Powerful insights. I don't know if this will spoil our own epic origin story movie. I was a suspect in a community theater murder mystery production when Jesse confronted me as a sheriff at 2001. Murder Takes the Stage. I assisted him directing a mystery farce called Mumbo Jumbo. Then both of us did our damnedest to present a hopeless Christmas carol. Lots of fun in mine. We both ended up moving to Bismarck and getting married. Not to each other, obviously. I certainly would have mentioned before now. He's the sweetest guy in the world. I love him to bits. Thank you so much for helping me explore Tenacious D's pick of destiny.
I associate many things with many things.
Cross connection. So this movie likely won't present much of a challenge in terms of mystical centers of my media collection, identified as 6 Feet Under, Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, Ryan Murphy Productions, and Joss Whedon Productions, or Studio 60 Feet Joss Whedon. No. It's already full with the epic casting. I've tracked Jack Black's involvement in past productions, not leastwise his appearances in episode 75, Be Kind, Rewind. The show should just accidentally provide a few. Well, okay, Amy Poehler was in Parks and Rec with Bradley Whitford. Direct tie both to Studio 60 and Joss Whedon's Cabin in the Woods. We've encountered that before. Paul F. Tompkins was in Brockmire with Amanda Peet from Studio 60. And, of course, Dave Grohl, the Satan of the piece, also appeared with Bradley Whitford in The West Wing, so multiple connections. Of course, it's important to trace the actual picks of destiny themselves, Jack Black and Kyle Gass. Let's start with Kyle. Kyle Gass was in Femme Fatales with no one in particular. Oh, I'm sorry, that was just fun to write and say, but actually he was in there with Charlie O'Connell, who was in Dangerous Intentions with Buffy herself, Sarah Michelle Gellar, so that tie is definitely there. It was fun to see. Jack Black has been in absolutely everything. I think the most direct tie I can loop him through, he was in Sex Tape with Rob Lowe at the West Wing with everyone in Studio 60. Also, The Office with Rainn Wilson of 6 Feet Under, as well as Community with Allison Brie, who was in Mad Men with Angel's Vincent Kartheiser. I wanted to mention Angel particularly because I was tracking Navi Rawat numbers from an episode of Burn Notice she appeared in, and saw where she'd also appeared as Dana in a 5th season episode of Angel. Jossverse at that point, Buffy series finale had activated all potential vampire slayers, including Dana, this girl who'd been committed to a mental institution. Once activated, all the horrific imagery of memories of past slayers flooded her mind, and now with the full strength of a slayer, she clawed her way out and confronted both Angel and Spike as, well, vampires. Direct Jossverse ties there, and somewhat unexpected given that episode also featured Benito Martinez of The Shield and Justina Machado of 6 Feet Under, making this 4th season episode of USA Network's Burn Notice kind of significant in terms of mystical centrality. Wrapping up cross connections for this set, I'll just notice I saw Allison Brie was also in Promising Young Woman, added that to my collection this set. Yay, resuming my current collection, I saw Vivica A. Fox in a 2nd season episode of Lifetime's Drop Dead Diva. She's more usually in my collection in Lifetime's Missing, and Breaking Bad's Giancarlo Esposito in a 3rd season episode of The Leverage, which also featured Aldous Hodge as usually the hacker, Alec Hardison presenting a virtuoso performance on Stradivarius in The Scheherazade Job. And if I have ever complained overmuch about, anything at all, ever, may I direct your attention to the reviews on IMDb for this episode where professional musicians lay into an actor's bowing technique and fingerwork on the Scheherazade solo. Holy Christ, it's basic cable. Okay, fine. Seriously, just to say I thought it sounded beautiful, whoever was playing it, and maybe we can all give each other a little grace. Correction. Error. Speaking of which, oh yeah, I timed this, sorry, my apologies, from episode 103 talking about the story and the engine on Doctor Who, I somehow misremembered the dramatic conclusion, even having watched it twice before commenting. Post the entryway imploding in the story space between Barbershop and Lagos, Nigeria, and outer space, after the barber's giant mechanical spider tried to climb through into our world, the door collapsed, and I remembered it skittering away off to some other part of the storyverse. Yeah, apparently after the doorway collapsed, that gigantic mecha spider on loan from Will Smith's Wild Wild West, I guess, exploded and broke apart, crashing and burning on the interstellar web at that end of that interdimensional breakdown. Well, I did mention the episode was confusing, but that part of the show did resolve itself clearly enough on screen, and I should have recorded it properly. My bad.
Diving into my classic collection.
In my classic collection, cataloging discs 1876 through 1900, woo, 1900, only 670 some to go. This set tracked among a very tight and, apart from Tenacious D and the Pick of Destiny, largely undifferentiated set of archiving. I closed out 100 questions, which I'd archived most of the episodes that aired 2 through 6, and never got picked up for the next, I guess, 94 questions, and wherever they'd have gone from that. Wow, that would have been an examined social history. A few more persons unknown turned up. I found 5 of those so far. I hadn't seen any new episodes of Happy Town since episode 6, Questions and Antlers, turned up on disc 1878, and I'm concerned. IMDb said the 2-part finale aired July 1st, and I've got lots of July 2010 programming in here from at least disc 1891 onward. I mentioned this was a tight set of contemporaneous recordings, and Happy Town is a show I was archiving with some interest, so I wonder if the burn-off finale even aired in our market. No big deal, I'd just planned to kick back and watch all 8 episodes once they turned up in this collection and comment on the production as a whole. Fortunately, we live in a universe where a lot of things are streamable. I'll track it down and get back to you once I have. Other shows turning up in this set, I mentioned Burn Notice, Leverage, I found more of The Good Guys, Ashes to Ashes, Drop Dead Diva, In Plain Sight, Royal Pains, Doctor Who, Community, and True Blood, with a few more Supernaturals archived to this set. I got the season premieres of Rescue Me, Hung, and Warehouse 13, the reboot premiere of Futurama, and series premieres of The Gates, The Glades, and Scoundrels, which is about a low-rent suburban crime family, which I hope is all the attention I gave this ridiculous-looking show. This set also saw the series finale of Saving Grace, which frankly was good riddance by that point. One of the Doctor Who's that turned up was fan and personal favorite Vincent and the Doctor. It tracked a few days late in the life of Toby Curran as artist Vincent van Gogh, a retro-configurated biography that involved the artist battling monsters only he could see and the dark influence they were having on his work. The episode was brilliant, well-written, and some of the best in the series. I mean, the focus on the sci-fi in the middle part is a bit clattery, but in the final scenes where Matt Smith as the Doctor brings Vincent to a modern showing of his works and he overhears the esteem in which he is held, wields a solid emotional punch. The kind of stuff this show is capable of at its best. Good to see that again. Along with Tenacious D, a couple movies turned up. On discs 1898 and 1899, I had Johnny Depp and Heather Graham in the 2001 Jack the Ripper treatment From Hell. I'm not sure, I think the 1996 John Malkovich and Julia Roberts take on Jekyll and Hyde and Mary Riley was better, but I may have to pull them up and do a side-by-side at some point if I ever archived it and it turns up one day. And as if by theme, I found Jack Black once again in this set on discs 1899 and 1900 in 2008's Kung Fu Panda, which is just such a fun opener to that franchise. I'd love to actually sit down and watch it again sometime. Probably streaming, though the sound and picture quality in this transfer was not good. Sometimes tapes just wear out and I did need to replace those dang things more often than I actually did. And that said, for the first time in half a year, I give you...
Checking out my current collection.
Woohoo! I actually have a current collection. I was so stoked I almost put off episode 103 so I could include fresh recordings, but between our books, files, and media showing up from Bismarck, going through it all, and getting everything a little more organized, along with this, I actually have some sad news. One of my 3 dubbers did not survive the trip. Upon its arrival in Utah, I discovered my Toshiba dubber, nicknamed Tabitha, was no longer functioning. To quote Opportunity, "My battery is low, and it's getting dark." Yep, I was a little bummed about this because it means I only have 2 disc recorders capable of dubbing VHS media, and by extension only 2 machines capable of playing VHS media. The good news, the VHS side had already died, so the net loss was a disc recorder. I technically have 4 of those in my possession ATM, so the memory we are honoring is to the disc recorder responsible for recording 3,200 plus hours of my current collection on 543 discs. Tabitha gave years of faithful service, starting around the final hours of 2016 when I received the most thoughtful Christmas gift of a Sanyo VHS-to-DVD dubber from Ralph. I put it to work transferring the last 3 moving boxes I had of VHS tapes, and while it was busy doing that, I checked to see if the other broken VHS dubber I had could manage direct-to-digital recordings on the DVD side. It could, and for the first time in 4 years, I could archive recordings again. Of course, the Toshiba took DVD plus R media, and the Sanyo took DVD minus R media, so I needed supplies for each. But while Sonia was finishing up my classic VHS collection, Tabitha got to work on my current collection. I'd started work at the print shop in Bismarck at this point, so I was home evenings and could watch first-run programming, which I did, recording The Good Place, Superstore, Fargo, American Horror Story, American Crime Story, Doctor Who. TNT aired hours of Supernatural every day, and I remember when IFC ran marathons of Community and Parks and Rec, I archived everything they aired. I figured if there was something I wanted to see that I missed the first time around, I'd had better odds of laying hands to it that way. I got Legion, The Alienist, The Magicians, Trial and Error, Dispatches from Elsewhere, many, many movies. Just so happy I was able to continue this effort. Direct-to-digital involved a learning curve, but I got it figured out. Having a DVR and then a TiVo proved quite helpful in the archiving. Nothing's entirely foolproof for a determined enough fool, of course, and Tabitha, you goof, you recorded an hour of diners, drive-ins, and dives after some kind of emergency alert cut in the middle of a 2 a.m. Turner Classic Movies presentation of the 1940s era movie Gaslight. That was weird to wake up to. Then, after repairing a non-finalized playback of The Eclipse, you just kept running and surprised me with a random episode of Modern Family, one featuring a Colombian hothead. But for the most part, if I wanted to archive something, we pretty much managed. Tabitha, your battery ran low, and it got dark. Thank you for years of service, and to Sonia for stepping up and resuming the archive. And that isn't even the most exciting part of this. I mentioned last time multiple discs were turning up unfinalized. Oh noes! I had to play them on my PC to find out what was on them. Well, Sonia is great at archiving fresh recordings, but can't even finalize her own discs. That is, probably she can, but the remote she came with went missing, and the universal remote I've got can manage recordings, but nothing more detailed. Computer, pause playback. I have marveled in the past at synchronicities with this effort. Running into the Minot Arts in the Parks production of Romeo and Juliet I was in at the same time we were mounting The Merry Wives of Windsor for Cap Shakes in 2022, Ghost in the Shell standalone complex showing up in my classic collection and my current collection at the same time that one time, and all the meet cute entries I talked about in episode 100. Sometimes things just coincide. This seems bigger than that somehow. When I helped clear my mom's space after she passed last summer, she had a practically new mint-condition VHS-to-DVD dubber I'm calling the Legacy Dubber. This came into my possession at about the same time as a bunch of discs started turning up in my collection unfinalized. As I said, Tabitha, the Toshiba player I was recording with in Mandan, died on its way here, so there's no way of knowing whether it'd be able to archive those discs. And Sonia, God love her, can't even finalize the archives I'm creating now. The Legacy player, however, I'm holding it as my parents' final gift to me, can finalize both my classic and current collections. With one proviso, it arrived into my care with no remote. But while the Toshiba dubber may have gone dark, her remote talks to the Legacy player. Both were Toshiba products. Legacy can finalize DVD plus R media, DVD minus R media. Just saying, I'd be in worse shape in terms of ability to archive media if I'd not secured this dubber for precisely this moment. Computer resume playback. So yeah, as predicted in episode 102, the very first entry on disc X544 is Martin Short singing Won't Do the Late Show, with an assist from a compilation reel of Martin Short appearances on Late Night with David Letterman, where I could get what I was missing the first 20 seconds of that song. Then, looking at what I archived, I just started recording stuff with Doctor Who, the Bob's Burgers that aired since we left Mandan, some murder mysteries I found airing on PBS, movies I pulled up and commented on in January. I remember because we were staying at the Sage Hotel Infernal before moving in with Ralph's sister. Now that we've got Sonia set up in her new role as archivist, I've been able to archive this stuff. Oh, and I archived Ryan Murphy's Midcentury Modern to my collection. Utterly ridiculous. From the people who brought you Will and Grace, working together with Ryan Murphy and Hulu, we bid a bittersweet farewell to Linda Lavin as Sybil Schneiderman. I hadn't seen this show yet when I'd heard of and celebrated her passing in episode 98, but it occurs to me that I have most often enjoyed her in sitcoms. We had a freebie channel going one afternoon, and the third season episode of Alice from 1978 popped up. Linda Lavin in her title role was fighting with Philip McKenzie as Tommy over Basic Teenage Rebellion, came to a head when Tommy drove a dirt bike into Mel's diner. Mel says, "Let the boy keep the dirt bike," offers to teach him how to ride it, and generally baffs Alice's child-rearing abilities. Alice says, "Fine, you take him." Mel does. The boy hurts his foot. It isn't until the end of the episode we learn Mel ran over the boy's foot with a dirt bike. Up till then, we all think he's just inattentive and Tommy was very clumsy. Mel's life is predictably disrupted having a teenager around, but doesn't want Alice to know the boy is hurt. Which she finds out anyway, and desperate to find out for herself how he's doing, she sneaks into Mel's poker game that evening in super convincing drag. Tommy sees through it immediately, but Mel deals her in anyway. They had a lot of work padding out that convoluted episode. Even had Flo stop by Mel's apartment to check on him after a night of partying, and Vera had to communicate Tommy's situation using a game of charades. But it was fun to watch a bit of what grabbed my attention about Lavin way back when, and see some of her latest work at the end, especially the episode that put her next to Judd Hirsch behind a piano singing Long Ago and Far Away. The drag episode of Alice incidentally aired not too long after a cozy rebroadcast of the second season episode of The Nanny that saw Fran Drescher geared up to sneak into a men's-only club to warn Mr. Sheffield about Corbin Burnson. I'm sure there's a who wore it better to be explored, but you can track that down and do it on your own time. Movie-wise, Ralph and I quite randomly watched a TCM presentation of It's a Mad, 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 Mad World one afternoon, and we're not... Well... When they remade the thing later with Rowan Atkinson, it was better. Side note, I did get around to watching Riddle from It Says 2010, IMDb says 2013, with Elizabeth Harness and Val Kilmer. Yeah, wow, I can't believe I missed that. My radar's usually a little closer tuned to Batman. Must be some kind of disruption going on in my life. Anyway, I did see Riddle. It was good atmosphere, reasonably well done suspense, and Elizabeth Harnois is, as always, astonishing. She did a great job. Her special needs brother went missing in high school, then 3 years later she returns home from college, and while working at a farmer's market, she glimpses evidence he may still be alive. She tries to find out more about what she saw that leads her to the small town of Riddle, Pennsylvania, a creepy little town. She discovers long-buried family secrets, legends of an abandoned asylum. Val Kilmer is a super unhelpful sheriff who seems to blame her for the investigation her missing brother sparked 3 years before. Since the kid is found, spoiler alert, in a cage, some crazy guy's got a cabin in the woods just outside town. Sheriff's daughter walks to the station from there with a bear trap snapped onto her leg. Doesn't feel like he looked all that hard. Crazy guys chased Elizabeth into the asylum and gets her strapped in for electroshock. Wild that they're still running power to that, right? But she burns him alive, frees herself, and makes a daring escape and rescues her brother, and zero impression on the sheriff, who seems at least complicit, but that was totally a sequence of images paired to an audio track and displayed on a screen. It was absolutely a movie. Great work. Better was the BritBox adaptation I saw of Agatha Christie's Towards Zero, a version of which I directed and played barrister Matthew Treves on the Minot stage in 2005. I feel like this one was pretty good too. Who am I kidding? Never mind Towards Zero, we produced and ran our entire theatrical program for less than what they spent on sax. That Art Deco presentation was phenomenal, well done, pitch perfect, emotions are spot on, and casting? Oliver Jackson Cohen as Neville Strange, Ella Lily Highland as Audrey, Mimi Keene as Kay, and oh, heavens, Angelica friggin' Houston as Lady Camilla Tresillian. Oh, my word, indeed. I loved the depths they explored with the court proceedings and the run-up to the stay by the seaside and the subsequent contretemps. Just an aside, the Miss Marples, the Hercule Poirots, those stories have absolutely been presented over the years and very well indeed. I recently viewed the Marple adaptations of The Body in the Library and The Moving Finger, but this adaptation was beautiful, dark, rich, high intention, along with the recent high-profile productions of Why Didn't They Ask Evans and Murder is Easy, gave me hope that some truly thoughtful miniseries adaptations are in the works for some of her more standalone stories. I mentioned up there as part of this flurry of recording activity, I rewatched the second season of Doctor Who, including the two-part finale, Wish World and Reality War. End of the Interstellar Song Contest, the Mrs. Flood, Anita Dobson's cryptic character we'd been following since Mel Gibson's debut as Ruby Sunday in the first season, spotted occasionally were iconic outfits of past companions, including Clara, Ramon Devrat, Nalunda, and goodness, in the storytelling episode, someone pointed out she was wearing Jamie's kit. Never quite got around to cosplaying as Louise Jameson's cavewoman character that we saw, but end of the Interstellar Song Contest, Mrs. Flood died when the whole arena went bluey. I say died because, just like with David Tennant and Nchuti Gatwa as 14 and 15, she bi-generated into a Ronnie and Archie Punjabi as the Ronnie. Wish World drew all the faith threads of the Mavity-verse established in the 2023 Christmas special Wild Blue Yonder, where Catherine Tate as Don Noble dropped a cup of tea into the Eye of Harmony and flung the TARDIS outside time and space, first encountering a version of Isaac Newton who coined a term for attractive force as Mavity, establishing this as an alternate reality, then encountering a gigantic space station outside time and space with a pair of formless ones trying to enter our universe. Doc established Fey rules, like they can't cross a line of salt without first counting all the grains of it, which bound the mystery of their existence, which is how in the life of this production, this Disney production, breaking a fairy circle locks you 73 yards from some mysteriously repellent version of yourself, or a flying boatload of singing goblins may try to kidnap you, or the underworld might transform the essence of an ancient mad Time Lord into a gigantic Skeletor. In the Wish World entry, the Ronnie, a time lady with a wristwatch vortex manipulator, travels back to Grimm's fairy tale times to kidnap the seventh son of the seventh son, porting his essence to this grumpy incel who creates an extraordinarily orderly world for everyone to live in, purrs soothingly to them all day, then as midnight draws nigh, allows doubts to creep in until the whole thing resets, threatening the self-sustaining reality of the Wish World and building tension as consensus reality slips further into the future, away from the Wish World. Nchuti Gatwa as 15, Verada Sether as Valinda Chandra are also locked in this reality as ordered on Wish, the perfect parents of perfect space baby Poppy, and everything is perfect all day long, but as the threads start to pull, it's clear that trans women, the disabled, and, well, anyone this tosser incel didn't care for were disinvited from participation and therefore invisible. Once the walls fell, everyone was aware of everyone else and able to address the situation at full strength. After our conversation about the Pick of Destiny, I talked to my friend and friend of the pod, Jesse Zimmerman, about the second season Doctor Who finale as well. I suggested that as a person with a TARDIS on his body, he might probably have some thoughts on the subject, and as it turns out, I was right. One of the other things I wanted to talk to you about was the Doctor Who. Because, the unfortunate reality around what seemed like I thought, a perfectly well-written finale that was, like, had the potential to go either into the next season or to try to, like, wrap up the whole Mavity-verse.
The whole Nchuti Gatwa Doctor reign was beautifully done. I mean, it was some of the best written Doctor Who episodes that have come out with the new rendition of the Doctor, the revival of Doctor Who.
The Disney,
So good.
And if all they did was give us 2 more years, I feel good about that, because I thought some of the better storytelling I've seen. I mean, I really thought that they decided that, okay, well, if we are in a form of the universe where fantasy and magic is part of the foundations that we laid for it, with Tennant and Donna Noble showing up before the Big Bang, completely outside the universe, and let the formless ones in, and they were the Fae, they were the like the goblins, they were that kind of monster, and so it was able to incorporate sci-fi fantasy in a way that it was always trying to be kind of at least legitimately science-based before, or at least some of the storylines, or most of the storylines, would have some kind of we have to say this word in order to explore this storyline, but in actually, like, being able to go into the magic verse. I always called it the Mavity verse, because that was the little shibboleth they put in at the beginning to say, okay, well, that's that. If that's our word for gravity, then that means that this is the universe that we're in.
And the last 2 seasons, they've had some phenomenal guest appearances.
Yeah.
Jonathan Groff was so good.
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention Neil Patrick Harris, who knocks it out of the park in anything he does. But that role that he had in this iteration of Doctor Who was frickin' fantastic.
Oh my God.
Beautiful.
Yeah, to reimagine the Celestial Toymaker in the magic verse.
Right? Or Jinx Monsoon as the music one. Oh my Lord.
Yes.
That was just unreal, the way that they did that. Yeah, and it just, every guest star that they had, every guest, protagonist or antagonist that they brought in was just, or the Lux even, the movie one. You get Alan Cumming, who is fantastic, where they get pulled into the movies. It was unreal.
And also, being able to, like, address the fandom.
Which was so meta, so wonderfully done.
Yeah.
And then, but it
allowed for some really exciting storytelling, I thought. Like, they could bring in, the Doctor could face death, he could face music, he could face light, and like what would happen in these situations. And the one thing that I thought they dropped the ball a little bit, because they could really have put stories into this universe. I mean, if they were going to go to Lagos, Nigeria, they really were allowed to make the barber a harbinger.
Yeah.
I mean, rather than trying to make it sci-fi, which I didn't think worked very well, because they were trying to, address the storytelling gods, the gods of story. And it's like, well, if you're going to do that, well, maybe, I don't know if this was the discussion, you can't defeat storytelling, because we're telling one right now.
Yeah. But it was stunningly beautiful. That whole, the way that they told us the stories and the animation bits that they did, it was just
exactly
gorgeous.
I just wish they had incorporated into that larger. I felt like it belonged in that arc, honestly. And this doesn't even bring us to the finale, because bringing the Ronnie back was, I think, it brought Classic Who and New Who together, and they incorporated a few of the film clips from the old series to bring her in. But in order for her to take on the seventh son of the seventh son storyline, I mean, that kind of this kind of wish power would allow you to remake reality in the same kind of way that the Celestial Toymaker was allowed to just rewrite physics as a game he was playing.
Yeah. The last 2 seasons, and one of the reasons why Doctor Who fans are so anxious right now is they got so much money shoved into Doctor Who, and because it was this cultural thing that, it really took off with Matt Smith and his Doctor, and then, just exploded with Bond and that whole arc.
Oh, yeah.
So they were like, okay, so we want to capitalize on that. We're going to shove money into this thing, but yes, you're going to make things pretty. You're going to get all this extra stuff, but it loses some of that original Doctor Who. You can see the zipper and the suit type. That old school kitschy sci-fi.
There's some energy to the old ones where they just relied on as much as suspension of disbelief. I loved the Time Hotel. I loved how they brought that back in.
Yeah, that was great. That was a wonderful incorporation. But, it's like, I miss the way that you could beat a Dalek was, here's stairs. That's because they can't go up. It's a robot that they can't move, But, I'm not discounting the fact that they did shove all this money into it and made it just gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
But it lost some of that heart, and that's one of the reasons why it might not be coming back.
Yeah, and I felt like we said goodbye to it in the 80s or 90s, and we said it came back. I thought perfectly. What's the word? I thought it was just perfectly organic the way it came back in time for them to celebrate a 50th anniversary and a 60th anniversary, and for them to have what happened in between there, and it's like we can't talk about that. But when they did show it, I thought that was
and then they brought in the War Doctor. And everything.
John Hurt was.
My God! Yeah,
brilliant. Yeah, I just it's if we had to say, if we are saying goodbye to the series, if the Doctor will use his energy to shift the entire universe to bring to save this one extraordinary life. And we don't know, it puts a lot of pressure on Poppy, but it was like, oh geez, cost an entire regeneration into Billy Piper.
Live up to this, kid. Come on.
Well, does she not have extraordinary problems to solve if she is in our universe? So we will wish her the very best.
Sure will.
But yeah, I thought
Godspeed, child. Godspeed.
Yeah, I figured that if he only got he didn't get anything like enough time. Judy got what was fantastic, just brilliant energy, and I loved the way they talk, because the show can get up its own butt about representation and all that, but I really did like the way that they kind of explored it a little bit under 13 when they visited Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King. These were real people who live in your life, this is.
And that Rosa Parks episode hit different.
Yeah.
It really did. It was so well written, and the way that they played it, and the way Jodie Whittaker played it, it was gorgeous.
And I feel like it's all stories, and it's all good stories, and it's around not just the Doc. The character, whoever is portraying the Doc, usually does a fine job. Yeah, I've seen. Really, really well done. And then the passengers on the TARDIS have tended to be the fodder. They've done more than they did in the original series, which was usually get into trouble or notice something, or they got separated, and now the Doctor has to go find them, and it's an adventure, and that's the adventure.
The whole original Monster of the Week type situation. They still did some of that, but they put way more story into it in the new iteration.
Yeah, I felt like that was a good part of it, and also made the stories better, because if the idea was usually it would be like a half an hour and like a 4-part series to tell any story, and it just fell into a kind of routine, like forcing them to fill an hour with something, okay, what's going on this week, and next week something different will happen. And it's like usually pretty self-contained, and we'll refer back. But I mean, I thought that the structure was better this time.
Well, but they switched up the structure a couple different times. I know there was that one season with Capaldi where every episode that season was a 2-parter.
Yeah.
So, the first 2 episodes, the third and fourth episode, the fourth and fifth, and that was an interesting way, especially to tell the doctor stories, because you can go a little more in depth in it, because you, in essence, have a 2-hour movie that you're going to show, or you're just going to cut it up in 2 parts.
Gave them a chance to, for people who were missing a cliffhanger. I don't know that they used it perfectly all the time, but it allowed them to, like you said, allowed them to tell deeper stories, which was more involving. So it was cool to see how it came to an end, and if it does come back. If it comes back in 10 years, if it comes back at all, I really do think that they left it in a good place. So,
yeah, they did, with an interesting tag at the end with who Judy regenerated into.
So, because at what point, Jody regenerated into Tenet. So, I mean, it's not necessarily going to be he had an arc over the special, and then the handoff was pretty good, I thought. So,
yeah, and it was nice to see Jody, again at the end there in the TARDIS.
I agree, I really do. It was,
they had a good back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, it was beautiful. And speaking of beautiful, really fun talking to you, Jesse.
Yeah, it's fun talking to you too, Terry.
I really felt like the movie gave us a good chance to dive into it, and I've loved your contributions through the years to the energy of this space, of this podcast. And I just had wanted to make sure that I was able to say and to tell you that it's just been a lot of fun this afternoon, but a lot of fun over the years too.
Good times, indeed.
Thank you, Jesse. That was fun. And it's just, we don't know. It feels like channeling regenerative energy into the vortex to shift reality a degree. However able the assist from 13. I mean, we saw the mods the master needed to turn the thing into a paradox machine. That essentially links a conduit between 2 alternate timelines. So it feels like even engineering a reality in which Poppy occurs is just part of that scar on Transalore. What do I know? Oh well, this episode is a celebration of interviews and nostalgia, so let's hear my thoughts from the end of season 1, which honestly I'm reasonably happy with how they held up. Terry? Another in the spirit of Blink-and-E method, Doctor Who's 20-minute season wrapped recently with a 2-part season finale organized around a mystery woman on the verge of, we've absolutely encountered this before, releasing new software around the world for free. Susan Triad, S-Triad, an anagram of TARDIS, yes, but in fact the significant reveal is in fact built from her first name, Susan Triad Technologies. Or, in fact, Sutek, the big bad from number 4 Tom Baker's adventure, The Pyramids of Mars, Osiris, God of Death. Adventure starts with number 15. I've been informed he is absolutely 15. And Ruby, Shitty Got One, Millie Gibson, joyously greeting everyone at Unit. Kate, Mel, Rose, Mini-Me, Grace Jones, Jarvis, some hot randos, and Doc demands to know who this older mystery woman is who seems to be following him around his various adventures. As he describes her, they get very quiet. Doctor, that's Susan Triad, who it seems is as much a construct as her name, because apart from being a tech genius unleashing new comm tech for free out into the world, she has also been a nanny bot, a triage device, a mother figure, a maid, and she's experienced all these realities as dreams. But the worlds the Doc has landed on all had their own ongoing stories exterior to his visit, cosplaying aliens, a hyper-connected hive-topia being consumed by AI slugs, war-ravaged planets, or some alt version of Earth where the no musicality. No time to explore this further because 21 years ago Ruby was left at the church, so Doc has Unit fire up the time window he knows they have. Pulling from a well-worn VHS tape of CCT from the era, the team can't quite make out Ruby's mom, but they can see the TARDIS that landed way back when, and there's a shadow on it, and a shadow on the TARDIS that Doc landed in Unit, and the logo for Susan Triad Technologies jumbles about a bit on the screen. It seems the big bad is revealed as being Sutek. The God of Death is glommed onto the TARDIS wherever they go. He's leaving his trace, which envelops the living and turns them into dust. He's inescapable. Ever since the Doctor encountered him back in the 1970s, he's essentially been trapped like a layer of paint on the outside of the TARDIS, holding on for dear life like Captain Jack that one time. The Doc has piggybacked to the beginnings and the ends of the universe, all of time and space. So now that Sutek's tech is unlocked, the God of Death is now free to destroy all reality. Which reminds me a little bit of the Flux, to be honest. It actually kind of looks like it, and that wasn't Sutek, that was some Gallifreyan lab coat positioned between universes. Kind of reminds me of Weeping Angels a little too, the dust. As for glomming onto the TARDIS, that's a wild ride indeed. This old Type 40 time machine just off the top of my head has in turn been a woman. In Season 6, the TARDIS was played by Sir Ann Jones. That must have been fun. In Season 3, John Sims, Professor Yana, and then Harold Saxon, always the master, rejiggered the thing as a paradox machine. In the original run, Peter Davison as number 5 offloaded vast inner holdings, so it was barely an engine room in a closet anymore. And when Peter Capaldi was running around, it once shrunk to the size of a loaf of bread. Kylie Minogue ran into it with a spaceship, but John Barrowman dry-humped the thing through the vortex, by extension, Sutek, and since Captain Jack is a fixed point in time and space, therefore immortal, that must have been truly annoying for a God of Death. I feel like there's other realities Sutek had to contend with, like when Matt Smith was trying to hold Amy Pond's pregnancy in limbo to protect Melody from the Church of the Silent to the Papal Mainframe. That was similar to the Schrödinger Are They or Aren't They adventure in Amy's Choice, where they were fighting zombie olds or freezing to death somewhere on the TARDIS. There's a crack in time and space somewhere, the other side of which it exploded, and then when it spat Jodie out in Season 11, vanished, then turned up, flickering on and off somewhere as the Ghost Monument, or the time David lost it for a few decades in Blink, or whatever the hell was happening with it and Matt on Chancellor, or when Ruby was frozen out of it for decades in Wales in the alternate timeline. Just, it was a lot of time for Sutek to hitch a ride, hatching his evil scheme while zipping back and forth through time and space to somehow engineer this Susan Triad thing as bait and unleash Grace Jones as a harbinger. Bringing death to death doesn't undo all the death any more than reversing the polarity makes a planet covered in Harold Saxon clones back into the original humans they started out as. Dragging Sutek along through the vortex past everywhere he's already been doesn't... Oh, for Christ's sakes, I mean, yeah, when 15 claimed as a duplicate TARDIS and the giggle, did we get a second Sutek as well? I mean, for people who pride themselves, they think of everything. There are cavernous, cratery gaps around this. And for all the mystery surrounding Ruby's mom, I was expecting more, frankly, and for all Mrs. Flood was being creepy, she sure switched off her death cult thrall like a frickin' switch. She got the last word, though. Wardrobe change, information she can't really have, and God knows who she thinks she's talking to straight out to the camera. It's weird choices. Anyway, so that was a wrap on Season 1. The bus is definitely on the road, and I love everything that's been done to mesh this season with the whole history of the Doctor and highlight his past connections. I like 15 for his compassion, his inventiveness, and his swagger. I do not much think of his adventures thus far, or, that is more to say, feel free to escape the Mappityverse and rejoin us out here in consensus reality, or, something somewhat less ridiculous. The God of Death is a fine big bad for a universe of goblins, fairies, and formless ones, but hey, let's dig ourselves back out of this year's Pandorica. As for Season 2, let's have a couple dozen more episodes and some means of establishing who this Doctor is beyond health and safety, gin and tonic division. Cheers! Thank you, Terry. And now... Yep, I was also able to finally replace my Casio keyboard with a Donner here. It's got about 1 million settings, so I'll be fussing with it for the rest of my life, but it's a nice instrument, and more to the point, it's good to be able to create new interstitials and drop-ins as needed. Yeah, getting into it, I love the fact that of the nearly 80 hours of VideoFuzzy in existence, more than 6 of them have been conversations with friends. My media experience is richer because of connections I've made with friends and family, and lifting these conversations from the digital mass is insight I might not have had, insight I could the better share with all of you having pursued and explored it. The topics have ranged from movies we watched together, media commentary, and shared experiences. I'm grateful to everyone who has shared their time, their thoughts, and their energy with me in this space, and I wanted to celebrate those instances from the past 8 years. For one thing, I counted 18 interviews. Along with this entry, that makes 19 altogether and 104 episodes over 8 years of my doing this. Oh, an average of 13 episodes a year. I had so many more installments near the beginning. VideoFuzzy opened as a weekly project, which I immediately determined was unmanageable. Even getting one out every 2 weeks proved to be beyond me. But it wasn't until I'd been doing this for 3 years, in June of 2020, that I hit upon what I felt was the right balance for episode releases. They come out whenever I've cataloged 25 discs, however long that takes. That's been the strategy for the past 5 years, starting with episode 66. As in my first interview in episode 21, negotiating an episode pile-up, posted on my birthday in 2018. Oh, I was 48. This effort wasn't even a year old at the time, and I encountered the short-lived NBC series Quarter Life, which... Can you even call it short-lived when only one episode aired? They broadcast the pilot episode in February of 2008, and it was so execrably received that there were probably network staffers trying to claw it back off the air during the first commercial break. They burned the rest of it off on basic cable. As a TV writer for a regional daily, I was a lot kinder to it in my own commentary, but what stood out to me was some students at the college were producing an original collaboration for the Black Box Theater in Harton Hall at Minot State University, also called Quarter Life, which fused the connection for me in my memory. Then, when the pilot episode turned up in my cataloging efforts in discs 433 and 434, I reached out to one of the playwrights, Kim Files, then Kim Quill, with whom I'd shared a stage in the Mouse River Players production of Neil Simon's Plaza Suite, as well as a soundstage during a noon show promo for it that turned up in my cataloging in January of 2020. That photo on VideoFuzzy's Instagram. I wasn't really set up for remote interviews, so what I did was I asked Kim to record her experiences while writing the show, well, co-writing it with Nicole Kvigny, then edited the prompt questions I'd asked her into her response to make it sound more like dialogue. It was a little rough, but as inaugural efforts go, I thought we sounded pretty good. Here's part of what we came up with.
So you'd been working on this for a while when NBC was developing their production. When did you hear, what did you think of when you heard about that?
So, in the process of making the arrangements to make the show actually happen, to go from finalized script to casting to even backing up further than that, just getting it on the schedule for the Black Box. Somewhere in the process of all that, somebody points out to me that, hey, did you know that this network is coming out with this TV show called Quarter Life? And I went, oh, of course they are. Isn't that just my luck that they would do that at the same time that this is happening? And had a little bit of a freak out about it for a few minutes. To be honest, probably for a few days at that time. And then thought about it and said, okay, well, I'm certainly not the first person who's ever used the term quarter life. That's not something that I came up with. So there's no reason to be concerned with some other entity using it too. Nothing new under the sun and all that. So I was vaguely aware of it when it came out. I had no idea. I still have no idea what it was about or characters or what they went through or any of that business.
Wow, I'd have been so curious, but cool. Yeah, looking back on it now, it's 12 years later. What do you think about your show, the show you put together, you and Nicole?
I have thought back on the play, the script, the writing process, all of that, and what strikes me as odd, looking back and thinking about who I was then and who I've become, is how many things are really important to me now that weren't touched on at all in that writing process. As I mentioned, I now work in addiction services, and going back and looking at it now, I would love to approach it from a better informed perspective. Certainly the things that that Lane and Michelle are talking about with regard to their parents' substance abuse, issues. Definitely who they become reflects those experiences that their parents had, but we don't really touch on that with Celia, and I feel like I kind of missed the mark on that. There was a lot more in retrospect that I could have said about the relationship between addicted parents and addicted children. It was the furthest thing from my mind at the time. It surprised me that things like social and political concerns that are at the forefront of my mind most days of my life right now were not even on the radar when I was in college, and didn't make any appearance at all in any of that writing process. I certainly don't think less of my 22, 23, 24-year-old self for any of that. I think it probably just would have complicated things, and honestly, it probably would have made for a much worse script to try to tackle all of those big picture issues in one, hour and a half long sitting.
And your reaction to the project, thoughts on your project, what you were trying to say or felt you were trying to say. Did you say it?
So there were a lot of things that we really thought were going to be stuff that had just happened to us that we thought would be interesting to people. Like, won't this be a fun little, kind of freak show? And it turned out to be that we weren't really telling anybody anything that they didn't already know. I think we learned more about ourselves through the process, sort of becoming part of this universal structure of, everybody's had these things happen to them. Everybody has felt this way. Nothing that you're going through is in any way new. Somebody out there has already been through it before. And that was why learning that, there's another show called Quarter Life coming out. Yeah, that's fine. Everybody experiences that, age range and experiences their own lives in unique and different ways. But really, we're all part of the same journey. Everybody is moving toward the same outcome. We just all have a different journey. And a lot of the things that we experience on that journey are things that other people have already been through.
Wow. Thank you, Kim. Kim Files, everyone.
My next shot at collaboration took me actually to Minot to interview Nancy Pearson, another theater friend of mine, through most of her players, highlighting the practical value of media transfers. Nancy was a speech coach at Sherwood, a town north of Minot, and turned up a collection of VHS tapes of student performances, talent shows, a county centennial celebration, and so forth, posted on social media asking if anyone would want a copy. We chatted about how the tapes turned up and people's reaction to hearing about them. Some featured family members and wanted copies, and at the time I suggested she transfer the VHS tapes to DVD. I messaged her about this project and how that's basically the sort of thing I do, and she sent them over. I digitized them and drove them back up to Minot with the copies, and we chatted a bit for the show, part of my April 2018 release of episode 24, Podcast Like Me, Sherwood Transfer. Nancy?
It's meaningful to me now because I taught these kids and I coach these kids. My sons weren't involved in this. It's not meaningful to them at all. So I do want to be able to pass it on to people that it will be meaningful. But like Sherwood's closed, now, and gone to Mohall, and all of our trophies that we won as Sherwood, I don't even know what happened to them. So, I don't know where the interest is anymore.
That's true. It's kind of like, it's just like a little bit of history, but it's kind of, it doesn't have a place.
A small segment could be interested in it. So we'll share it with those that are great memories of the students that were talented performers. Just such great memories of.
Well, now you'll be able to enjoy them because you'll have something that'll actually play it.
And I can pass them on to those that would be, very, very much interested and involved in it. So thank you. Oh, I appreciated it so much. This is amazing.
My college friend Nathan Irwin and I got together in June of 2018 to take in some Shakespeare, celebrate his then recent marriage, and chat about the deep-cut origins of my media collection, which traced my recording episodes of Monty Python's Flying Circus and How Are You Being Served off MTV and PBS while attending the University of North Dakota in Grand Forks, and became part of episode 30, Exploring Filtered Lives, posted in July of 2018. Along with shows we enjoyed in our formative televisual comic backdrop, Nathan shared a few insights on the ascent of cable and streaming services, and until now, so far as I'm aware, the only time the word apotheosis
Right, and now we've sort of seen the apotheosis of that.
Has been uttered on this podcast in my 8 years of doing this. Nathan?
Well, and it's interesting. You were talking about how we get in these new models, we tend to get better programming, and if you'll indulge me for a moment to sort of play a pedantic card, because I know of a thing or two about broadcasting and programming. There's actually there's a reason for that, and that's because back in the days when all of us only had over-the-air television and there were only 3 channels, in order to stay on the air and stay profitable, the networks had to program for the widest possible audience. Mm-hmm. You had, so ABC, NBC, even though they're, one of them may lean a little more in the direction of sitcoms, one may lean a little more in the direction of, say, westerns for a couple of years. They all basically had to compete for every viewer. And so that led to a lot of homogeny on programming. Everybody had a morning news program like Good Morning America or The Today Show. Mm-hmm. And then when that was done, they would cut over to their game shows or their soap operas. And then from that, they would go into cartoons and then the evening news and then, the primetime programming. Mm-hmm. Once cable comes along, the cable companies realized early on that if you're going to do just one style of programming, sports or news or travel or whatever, you end up you're no longer competing for the entire audience. If you're ESPN, you're only competing for the types of people who want to watch sports. Mm-hmm. If you're the Sci-Fi Network, you're only competing for the types of people who want to watch science fiction. And that's a subset of the larger population. But once you're, say, the Sci-Fi Channel, you can say, oh, okay, here's the audience we have. What would work for this group for these people? What's going to set them on fire and get them addicted to our channel or our platform or our streaming service? And I don't think it's any coincidence that I can't speak for the on-demand or the streaming platforms, but I remember seeing an article in 2002 that total viewing of cable channels, of all cable television, had finally surpassed all broadcast television. And it was 3 years later that all of a sudden we started getting these really, really good, direct to cable TV shows. Mm-hmm. And so when they finally had the bigger slice of the television cake, that was when that was around the time they started having the budgets to do their own stuff instead of just syndicating Law and Order reruns.
And we've heard from him twice already. I first got together with Jesse for this project in November of 2018 for episode 38, Shows I'm Not Watching, which I was intrigued to discover is at least a second entry in this effort without a catalog entry attached. I know why episode 59 doesn't have one, because it was just a one-off review of Knives Out. Can't understand why this one wouldn't, but when I encounter some version of 2018 podcaster Terry J. Aman, I'll give him a write-up and a stern talking to. For episode 38, Jesse and I chatted about a lot of shows that he had watched I had not, like FBI, SWAT, SEAL Team, Stranger Things, Blackish, The Goldbergs, A Million Little Things, and This Is Us. I've since followed up on A Million Little Things, and more recently Stranger Things, which I'd say my reactions to those shows fell along a range, but along with the commentary, Jesse shared some cool insights I wanted to highlight.
One of the things that I had hoped to bring up was a post that you had shared, which I wanted to acknowledge this and celebrate it a little bit, because if you don't like a show, you can just not watch it. If somebody is getting some joy out of something, why do you need to yuck their yum?
And to speak to that, I've always hated the term guilty pleasure. It denotes that there should be shame in something. And there shouldn't. If it gives you pleasure, do it. Enjoy it. Unless it affects other people in a negative way, do it.
But it's you on a screen.
Yeah, exactly.
You watching a screen. It's not like you bringing a whole bunch of people in to watch something only
if
you
you're
like.
tying people down and force-feeding, this show to them,
Survivor.
Yeah. Oh, God.
The Bachelorette. What are they on, season 40 of these things?
My problem with most of those shows is being popularity contests and I call it lowest common denominator television, because you're pandering to audience X for XYZ reasons.
But then other high-end shows like Game of Thrones, that one's coming back. People are very excited, and
I can't wait.
Even you don't need this, as you can just stream stuff. It is my least favorite way to watch television is to stream something.
Of how we grew up. We grew up with that anticipation of, oh, I can't wait till Monday when this show is on, or I can't wait till Wednesday when I can see this show again. And oh, there's a cliffhanger for this week. I gotta wait 2 weeks because something's on next week. I gotta wait 2 weeks. Yeah, that anticipating of a television show built, I think, deeper fandoms as far as I'm concerned. Mm-hmm. But I do see the benefit in binging shows because it's the best way to adapt a book. Mm-hmm. Because you could now do a 13-hour movie. Every season you can have a 13-hour movie. I know Adam Savage talked about, somebody asked him what's the best novel that's been adapted into a movie or whatever, and he was like, well, with novels, because they're so large, you can't, I'm paraphrasing, mm-hmm. but they're so big and so in depth that you can't pack all that into a 2-hour movie. That's why he said short stories are the best adaptations to books, like The Body mm-hmm. is adapted into Stand By Me and stuff like that. But it's proving true that something else he said about how you can tell now with all these limited series or just these television series on Netflix and Hulu and all that stuff with these 10 to 13 episode shows, you can adapt something and let everything breathe.
Then in May of 2019, I met up with my friend Mark Bailey in DC to take in the Marvel Avengers sequel, Endgame. That conversation recounted in episode 49, Podcasting in Plain Sight, which that back there was my first of 4 interviews with Jesse in this series. And this is the first conversation of 4 in here with Mark Bailey, also known as Grohl. Both have been part of my VideoFuzzy the soundtrack effort as well. Truly love longtime friends and friends of the pod and their willingness to be part of this. I have to ground this into a bit of backstory. Mark is a longtime online TV chat buddy of mine from the days of the Angel Forum on TV Tome. I've said it before and elsewhere, his middle-aughts effort, Grill Wolf's Geek Life's first podcast I ever subscribed to, and emotive spark for this podcast even existing, very much appreciated his friendship over the years and his contributions to this project specifically, starting with some of our fresh from just having watched it commentary on that show. Hello, it's Terry Aman here with Mark Bailey, also known as Grail Wolf, and we just saw the Avengers Endgame, where I found that I had the body of a Norse god.
I can see that now! Yes!
Yep, I look exactly like Thor, so...
yes.
Respect.
Yeah. So, this might be a little disjointed because, as I mentioned in the theater, we both just had actual emotional damage perpetrated on us by a rather long length of celluloid, or the digital equivalent, I guess.
Oh.
But, whew!
Damage, but also I would have said at least a good portion of it restorative. Now, this is mostly after the restoration of all of the people that we lost all this time ago.
Yeah.
And what kind of a universe are we in after that? Well, one's still worth saving if Tony Stark's daughter, his 5-year-old daughter, who, when we saw her, is like, oh god, yeah. You don't want just an alternate timeline. You need.
We need to save this world.
Yeah.
That was brilliant because this is something that has been really absent from most of the time travel stories that I've come across until fairly recently. And I'll tell you where I first saw that really handled well was the show Journeyman.
Oh, okay.
A brilliant, tragically overlooked show. But
no, go into it a little bit.
Well, he just in the show, the main character occasionally slips back in time, and to various times, and the things he does when he's in the past do have an effect on the present when he comes back. And in one particular episode, he wound up being at the place where he and his wife reconciled, and something he does sort of interrupts that. Doesn't stop it, but when there's a slight change in the way things happen, very minor, just a time difference of a day or two, and when he comes back, he no longer has his son, he has a little girl. And then he's got to try to explain to his wife that he's got to go back and fix this, and to her, she's always had a little girl. Yeah. That, when my son was born, up until that moment, one of my favorite mental games was the what if. What if I could go back in time, knowing what I know now, make some changes, do things. I used to love doing that. Yeah. It was just a fun way to spend. I can't do it anymore. Because there is no way that I could make a change to a single second of my life and be sure that I would still have my son. But in terms of the idea of a time travel solution, I found this incredibly satisfying because every other time travel story that I run across has this very simplistic idea of time moving linearly from point A to point B, straight line, and then you make a change, and it makes a change downstream, but that's it. But that we already know. Well, we theorize pretty confidently that there's more than one reality. That there are various realities. Therefore, it makes sense that if you make a change in a timeline, you wouldn't change the future from your point of view, which is now your past, effectively, because you've left it to come to the past. You wouldn't be changing that. You'd be creating a new timeline. And I love the fact that they addressed that. It was, I thought, very well done. And done in a way that I think that the general audience will get that.
I got together with Jesse again for the title endeavor in my February of 2020 release, episode 61, Watching Terrible Movies, where I'm just going to let this run. Jesse gives, I think, a fantastic review of Rockula. The entry, I say it out loud, conforms least well to the premise.
Rockula, you foist upon. Oh, that's not fair. Oh, it's not fair. That was probably the most fun of the four movies I watched today.
Because it stars Dean Cameron, who is infamously in a '80s movie with Mark Harmon called Summer School. He played the character of Chainsaw. His mother in the movie is Toni Basil. Yes, that Toni Basil. Mickey, you're so fine. Another friend of his happens to be Bo Diddley. So there's Bo Diddley's in the movie.
And an Oscar nominee.
And an Oscar nominee is the bartender, Chuck the bartender. And the plot of the movie is Dean Cameron is a vampire, and has been a vampire since the 1600s, who is destined to fall in love every 22 years with the same woman, who is then killed by a rhinestone, peg-legged pirate with a ham bone. And the ham bone's very important to the plot of the story for exactly one joke at the end of the movie. Where Dean Cameron...
No spoilers.
Well, spoilers. There's no spoilers.
That'd be a spoiler for a movie that came out.
Big spoiler. Spoiler alert. Thomas Dolby plays the pirate. Yeah, that Thomas Dolby, blinded by science, the inventor of the polyphonic ringtone, Thomas Dolby, plays the pirate who hits Dean Cameron's mom with the ham bone, and Dean Cameron turns to him and says, "You just boned my mom." That is the only reason that a ham bone is the weapon of choice for the peg-legged pirate for one joke at the end of the movie. But that aside, this movie's fantastic. It's a musical, which was kind of a theme throughout the night that ended up being that way. And the music's good. I like the music. By My Side, the love ballad from Rockula. I listen to it all the time. Yeah.
I kind of like his first, the Rockula, rock flavored theme. I enjoyed the rap flavored theme. It was at the. It was a reflection of the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
We had the love ballad, as you mentioned, and I called them Hanson. They weren't Hanson. They were the visiting kids. But I'm sure they're a huge musical presence in Eurovision.
I'm sure.
Almost certainly.
It's a good flip.
That one was fun, and I don't think it held up to as well to the theme of terrible movies. Jesse offers the Lost Skeleton of Cadabra, and I brought Hail Caesar, having purchased that with a few other terrible movies.
I've watched bad movies. I've watched those 60s and 50s cheesy sci-fi movies, and I enjoyed them.
Later, we talked about Repo, the genetic opera, which is the source for a clip I included in episode 100 for Jesse's excellent impression of Hedonism Bot from Futurama.
And to quote Hedonism Bot from Futurama, "Surgery as an opera? How droll!"
Celebrating my third year putting this together back in June of 2020, episode 66, Providing Leverage, I checked in once again with Mark Bailey and we dug into the power of media and nostalgia, including the importance of physical media.
When I'm retired, I want to be able to throw something in the thing and be able to, but you will have access to all of anything that's ever been broadcast anywhere. You can pull it up at will. It's like, but I want to find it on a disc that I have recorded.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, that is something that I wrestle with a lot, because I do enjoy having things on physical media of some kind. It gives a surety that you'll be able to find the thing again. Too many times I have found some beloved thing, watched it, and then go to show it to someone else, and it's just not there anymore.
Yeah.
And even in situations where, for example, let's say that you go to Amazon and you buy whatever it is, a TV show or a movie, if down the road somewhere the company that made that television show or movie pulls its licensing agreement from Amazon, you no longer own that thing.
Access.
Yeah,
it's gone.
Physical media itself is sort of going away. I have gotten rid of a lot of my old collection because there's a lot of things that I just went through and looking at it. Realistically, I'm never going to watch this again. Mm-hmm. And if I decide to, it's going to be streaming somewhere.
Yeah, they're all somewhere. Everything is somewhere, but some things aren't.
And having broken format last set included 2 Jesse comments from the same conversation. This was such a great sentiment I've alluded to in other conversations. I wanted to share it here too. Mark?
Wonder Falls is one of those things that is something I should have seen so long ago. I saw the episodes that aired, and I own the DVD set. I can't bring myself to finish it because I don't want it to be over.
God, that is the most beautiful reason for not having seen the rest of it. Because
I love these people, and
I don't want it to be done.
Never to be outdone, Jesse time and again just reveals insights, ways of viewing media I'll miss on the regular. We got together again in December of 2020 to watch terrible movies, and Tanya, also did not fit the premise, but he gave some of the best comments on it. Jesse?
It was shot wonderfully. They recreated the actual interview tapes of Tanya's mom and Tanya and Galuli and all the other players involved. And they kept it in that 4:3 aspect ratio of the old school VHS video cameras.
Yeah, it really stood out a few times.
It was a muted tone because of they took mostly in Portland, in Oregon area. So they used a muted, overcast tone for most of the film.
And it fit.
And then, at the moment she shined, you could tell the color switch and stuff. So cinematically, it was very, very well done. Yeah.
And I hadn't... God, I should have known this. I mean, obviously this is being recreated in front of us, but that Margot Robbie was actually playing the character of Tony Harding, playing the role. And a few times through this, she just turned to the camera and her face is going to be her face throughout. So I'm seeing Harley Quinn. And it's like, good Lord, that isn't Harley. And it's like, well, yeah, of course it isn't.
But she did a good job. There's quite a few times that you forget it's Margot Robbie.
I really did.
Yeah. She really fell into the role of Tanya Harding and did a wonderful job.
Then in episode 82, expanding my mystical centers, I had the singular honor of chatting with Austin Tichenor. I've been a fan of his Reduced Shakespeare Company podcast for years, and we talked about his appearance in such productions as Close to Home, The West Wing, and Nip Tuck, as well as his work in Felicity and Mr. Sterling. Toward the end of our conversation, I noted here, I think I set it up just fine in the interview. Terry?
A light focus goes, it feels like you chose a strong one. The bard is ever with us. It feels like Shakespeare is just throughout our storytelling. It's a reference that a lot of people are going to get.
Well, interestingly, I haven't, I joined the Reduced Shakespeare Company literally 30 years ago this year in 92. We did the complete works, and then I didn't do an awful lot of Shakespeare for 20 years because we were reducing other things, and I was in LA doing lots of film and television, none of it Shakespeare. Mm-hmm. And, this maybe Aaron Sorkin and David E. Kelly being the exceptions, a lot of what you get to say on these shows is hardly Shakespeare either.
No, certainly.
But knowing Shakespeare and being a playwright myself, I'm able to look at the words on the page and kind of glean why they're written in the way they're written. So I think that has helped me a lot. Mm-hmm. But I've only really double, triple, fourfold down to Shakespeare in sort of the last decade, really, 10 or 12 years. As I've just realized, wait a second, I realized the exact same thing that you just said. Shakespeare's everywhere. Yeah. Oh my goodness. instant credibility to something. If you quote Shakespeare a lot, then whoever wrote that can go, all right, I'm smart and classy by association because I've included Shakespeare in my story.
Shakespeare indeed is everywhere. As if cementing my own premise, my next conversation in episode 83, Make It a Word and a Blow, is with Aaron Weichel, my director in the 2020 Capitol Shakespeare production of Merry Wives of Windsor. The episode itself is a celebration of my production of Romeo and Juliet I was in 2005. Aaron and I talked about our then still upcoming production of Wives.
This Merry Wives, you said, is like probably the closest thing to farce that Shakespeare has gotten. You had this idea to put it on through the prism of 1950s comedy. How has that initial idea come to life as the show has progressed?
I think the initial idea, it was funny, the costumer came to me and she had the exact same thought I did. And we hadn't even talked about it, and we both said, oh, that's perfect. But I think it's come to fruition exactly as I had it envisioned in my brain, and the costumes are great. They lend themselves to the movement and to the frivolity, but they also give such a stark contrast between male and female and what a woman's role is and a man's role is in society. And then we get to make fun of all of that.
People think Shakespeare and they think 1600s. To bring that forward, but also to make it work with the word, that's a success.
Yeah, we work really hard to make it understandable. We want everyone to walk away from it. Maybe they didn't understand every single sentence and every single word that was said, but they could tell me back the story. And that's one of the great things about this particular play is the humor is so easy to understand. It's right there on the page, and then when you bring it to life, it's just funny.
Thanks so much, Aaron.
Thank you. That's awesome.
Then, for episode 85 in December of 2022, I found where I'd archived Sci-Fi's 2007 production of The Dresden Files, based on the Jim Butcher book series. Mark is such a huge fan of that series, I knew I needed to get on the phone with him to chat about it.
I'm no expert on Harry Dresden of The Dresden Files, so I turned at this time to my friend and friend of the show, Mark Bailey, also known as Grohl, who as of now has increased his demands to 13 reasons why The Dresden Files is a bad show. Mark?
Oh boy. Yeah.
God damn it, I want to keep that.
Dresden Files, at the point when they were starting production on this, I had read all the books to date and was a big fan and was part of some of the online communities that talked about the books, including one where Jim Butcher posted pretty regularly, the author of the books. And I don't even remember how this happened, but somehow I got invited to sort of a backdoor, side door kind of posting location where he was talking about this new top secret project that was going to be the series. And eventually some of the producers of the series started posting there as well. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of interesting back and forth. Because of that, I was pretty much ready for what I was going to get. And I don't know if that helped or hurt, but we were kind of there as they were going through their thought processes. But they made one big mistake, which is they would post, hey, we're going to do things this way, and here's why. But they would do so after they'd already been filming. And so everyone would respond, oh, really? You're going to go that way? And they couldn't really react. They're like, yeah.
We're going to go that way, and we're actually already several thousand miles down the road.
The biggest changes that they talked about seemed like they wouldn't be that big of a thing, but, okay, preface the whole thing by saying that whenever you change a story from one delivery mechanism to another, you're going to change things. You have to. The different media are different, and I know it's profound. But they're different on a deep enough level that what will work in one just won't work in the other, all the time anyway. However, when a character is created, you've got certain things that become part of that character in the eyes of the fans, in the hearts of the fans. And a lot of the accoutrement that might seem negligible can be really important. Harry is a wizard. He carries around a wizard's staff. He gets funny looks occasionally because of carrying around a wizard's staff. He doesn't carry it everywhere, but when he does magic, the runes on his staff glow. This is part of who he is in the minds of the fans. Instead of having him carry a staff around, he was going to carry a hockey stick. He carries the staff. He often carries a blasting rod as well. He's got a shield bracelet on one wrist. He's got his pentagram on a chain around his neck. He's not hiding who he is. He in fact goes out of his way to kind of dress it up. He wears a flowing black duster, which he also doesn't have in the series. So yeah, they really did away with a lot of the things that pointed out who he was. They didn't make things look the way they looked in the books on a design level. They changed everything. His shield bracelet I was talking about. In the books, it's like a charm bracelet. Yeah. It's a chain with little shield charms hanging off of it. And in the series, they made a leather band with round discs sewn onto it.
Really butched it up.
Yeah, it looks cool. Nothing wrong with that. And, maybe if Jim Butcher had seen that design before he started writing, he might have written it that way. Who knows? But there wasn't a good reason, in my opinion, again, to make that change. It was, I guess they were trying to butch it up. They didn't want him to look all femme and girly.
Dangly.
Right. But, in the books, it is a common thing. Before he gets into a fight, he's like, he'll say, I shook the charms out of the cuff of my coat and started powering up my shield bracelet. That's a thing that he does all the time. And that would have been cool to see. For actually him even wearing a coat would have been cool to see. Then you've got Bob.
Yeah, you were coming up on Bob.
Yeah. What about Bob? In the books, Bob is an elemental spirit of intellect. He is disembodied. He's never been a person. He is just this sort of a spiritual computer. And Harry can use him for information about anything arcane. Anything Bob has ever learned, he still knows and can call up. So, say Harry wants to construct a certain spell or deal with a certain type of magical creature that he's never encountered before, or create a certain kind of potion, not a problem. He goes to Bob, explains what he needs, and Bob gives him the information. He's also, really sarcastic and funny, and he lives inside a human skull. So, of course, when adapting this to television, they went with a fully on-screen human British actor.
Completely.
There's totally exactly the same character design. I 100% nailed it. It's one of those situations, I think, where all these different changes, any one or two of them I could have accepted, especially knowing why they did it. But making so many, and then just such a change in tone from the original source material, it built up to a sort of critical mass where it was like, this is no longer the same thing. Now, that said, I think if they had started this out, like renamed all the characters and called it like, Willy the Wizard, I think I would have liked the show. It's actually not a terrible show. I don't think I would have loved it, but it would have been pretty good.
Well, the universe it had inhabited would have been self-creating. It wouldn't have been some bastardization of a storyline in a universe that you loved.
Episodes 87 and 88 were a great deal of fun for me because I had a chance to dive back into some deep nostalgia. Friday nights at my place at Minot for beer, night train pizzas the size of wagon wheels, hanging out with my friend Kirk Nybakken. We got together in April of 2023 to make fun of the USA Network production of White Collar.
I could have it tested. You have a lab in the basement I don't know about? No, but they are in a gallery. They go through private labs to authenticate work. Authenticate that out of it. Why, this is fake! Fake? He was taken by the old cat breeders upstairs apartment! I told you!
No, that was actually from my first podcast, TV is the New Reading, at June of 2011, when Kirk and I got together to watch the third season premiere. Easily one of the funniest things ever said on a podcast I did. Here's from our White Collar Conversation of VideoFuzzy, episode 87. Mozzie, the Treasure.
Just the prison break, start there. They said, he got his hands on the warden's wife's American Express card and ordered a guard uniform
online.
And in between the time his girlfriend came to visit him and he broke out, he grew this massive beard. So everybody would think that, oh, Neil Caffrey's the guy with the beard.
He's that beard guy.
And then he shaved it. And then nobody recognized him.
There's this new guard walking around.
We've worked here for 20 years with the same guys, and this guy shows up.
Yeah, the blocking, they had everybody kind of like facing away from him, but like the one guy who like opens the door for him to get out is like, it can't be this easy to get in and out of a Supermax prison.
It's the TJ Maxx prison. That reminds me of that scene from Idiocracy. I'm supposed to be getting out of prison right now. See, that guy's already sat on my head and everything. Oh, get out of here. You're in the wrong line.
Oh, Lord. The writing on the show. And here we've put you in this terrible little monthly rental. But here's Diane Carroll. And you can live.
She has a $20 million apartment that happens to have an extra space you can stay in.
It's a guest room, but it's mostly storage
and she
now.
lets you stay there.
And she,
because you just met her at a pawn shop.
It was so nice of her, really. Goddamn, the latest.
Because I meet a lot of people at pawn shops, and I got plenty of room. You know?
We watched her let Peter Burke, the FBI guy, we watched her let him write in, and then Mozzie apparently just
some other guy. I'm a friend of Neil.
Oh, Neil, of course.
You can trust me. Sit alone in the dark in my house while I'm upstairs sleeping.
Damn. Billionaires are famously trusting. That's how they got to be billionaires, is they let people know and walk in from. Well, my late husband was also a criminal. So it's all right. Thank you, Kirk and Mozzie. Put down that Art Deco Degas before it blows up and flies out a window. We got together again at his place in June of 2023, in part celebrating my 6th anniversary of this project, and to comment on the long-anticipated 8th season Psych episode I'd been talking about since 2019, when I archived Remake, or Cloudy with a Chance of Improvement, and was waiting for the first season original episode to turn up, which it did on discs 1401 and 1463, so as to compare the two. We were talking about stuff that would have stood out from the season 1 to the season 8 version, like James Roday as Sean and his relationship with Maggie Lawson as Detective Juliet O'Hara. The Jules stuff would have been a little bit prescient, but
yeah, my favorite line in that was when he was describing Jules. He says, and we're going to have so many kids, many of them will have to be put up for adoption.
So many. Was it a stronger story, do you think?
You know what? I probably watched that one at one time and didn't remember that it was one in season 1. So I think they both hold up on their own. I guarantee I didn't remember there was one that was done before,
Oh, there's 7 years between. They were also, completely.
And there was enough of there was slight differences that it wasn't completely.
If you remembered the first one, and then rewatched it, you wouldn't have been spoiled because they changed.
They were that much different.
Thank you. In October of 2023, Ralph and I visited Philadelphia, and I followed up with a post by my friend Brad Johnson out that way about the 3rd season finale of Hulu's Only Murders in the Building. After 3 seasons, the bodies, he noted, were starting to pile up. I wanted to check in with you because you had a theory about the Jessica Fletcher thing happening to this building, which seems like it shouldn't be a crime scene as often as it is.
Well, just to fill people in at home, when I was talking about it, I made a post on Facebook just comparing the two shows. Murder, She Wrote is based in the fictional Cabot Cove, Maine, or is it Cabot Cove?
Cabot Cove.
Cabot Cove, okay, fair enough. I was really little when it was on, sorry. But basically, more people got killed in that one little ass town than there were more people getting murdered in that one little town than the entire state of Maine in real life.
I know.
And it's like,
it ran forever too. I mean, it's just like, god damn, every time she did a book tour or anywhere she would go, there'd be a dead body on Earth. How could it not be her at some point?
It's like Jessica appears and everyone's like, the angel of death. Oh, we're going to die. We're going to die.
She's just the nicest person. Oh dear, murder.
Right?
Who could have predicted?
Exactly.
All of us at this point,
right?
Your publisher at this point,
pretty much like
promotions person.
The publisher's probably killing just to keep her in work.
Yeah, almost. So, in fact, when does she have time to write anything?
Exactly.
But yeah, so many people are dying in this building. I was thinking, well, okay, every time we've had a dead body show up, it's made sense. Mabel had a connection to Tim Kono,
right.
And then we almost had another murder with Jan. He had a detective murder with.
Well, she almost blew up the fucking building.
Yeah, that was in all of them, and
then the old lady, Bunny. Yeah.
That was just so freaking calculated. And it was between not just Poppy, but
the cop
Rappaport. Had between the two of them. So that was kind of an interesting kind of take on it, and it was as artificial as maybe you were saying, like everything else was. It was like, hey, maybe we didn't need this murder to happen, but she needed this murder to happen in order to have work.
Exactly.
So then this third one is like, that was incidental, but it was all because it happened at Alder's apartment, and it happened it was like at the Arconia, but and he was living there too, so it was like he had taken over Amy Schumer's apartment. So
I didn't realize he was living there, but they might revealed that in the previous season.
There was just like just the tiniest line of dialogue. Oh,
wait, they were in his apartment cleaning it out. I forgot about that.
Amy gave me a great tip on the apartment and that house. So.
And then an episode where Dickie was cleaning it out, and Mabel and Topper were sneaking in there. I remember that now. Yeah. And it's just funny. It's like more people get killed there than in the projects.
So it's just, just stand out. And of course, Detective Williams has pretty much mapped out
I like her.
the route to the like, this again. It does seem like it's a lot for a show that's only had 30 episodes. So I'm really looking forward to season 4. I got on the phone with Mark again the following summer for episode 94, Into Every Generation, when I encountered the Buffy the Vampire Slayer movie archived to disc 1604, celebrating at the time my 7th anniversary and adding the Jossverse as a mystical center for my media collection. Mark talked about the impact of the show and then the series that grew out of it.
How funky is your chicken? How funky is your chicken? How loose is your goose? Our goose is totally loose.
A couple things with this one. I wanted to mark 7 years putting this little podcast together with something special. And one very special mark I can point to is a longtime friend and friend of the pod, Mark Bailey, also known as Grohl Wolf. Figured I'd celebrate the funkiness of this chicken properly. Mark?
Anytime I can be mentioned in the same breath as a funky chicken, it's a good day. So,
and then congratulations.
Even shows that intended to portray strong female characters or, outsiders who, in a good light, rarely had this kind of impact. And I think, I honestly, I think it can be summed up. The impact that it had, the reason that it resonated so much. Now, I'm to preface this, I'm speaking for women, and I'm probably am not the person to be doing that. But if you'll allow me, it's based on women I have talked to. I think the line that I think really sums up why it was so impactful and why it resonated. There was a version of this a couple times in the series, but in the movie. Even as far back as there. In the very end, Ike and Buffy are dancing after everything is done. No music, but they're dancing together. And he says, Buffy, you're not like other girls. And she says, yes, I am. And that's really the thing. This person who is the chosen one, who is a superhero, who we see regularly kicking butt, is still just a girl.
Yeah.
In the show, it was the 100th episode opens with her. The last episode of season 5 opens with her hearing somebody in the alley being attacked, and goes out and drives away or kills a vampire, and the male victim is standing there, mouth agape, and just says, "But you're just a girl." And she says, that's what I keep saying.
I was deeply honored and frankly thrilled at the chance to interview actors involved in the Capital Shakespeare production of Hamlet last summer for episode 95, Dead for a Ducat, Derek Pick in the title role and Shotzi Eichman as Ophelia.
Fast you now, fair Ophelia. Nymph, in thy orisons be all my sins remembered.
My lord, I have remembrances of yours that I have long and longed to redeliver. I pray you now receive them.
No, not I never gave you aught.
My honored lord, you know right well you did. With them, words of so sweet breath composed as made the things more rich. Their perfume lost. Take these again, for to the noble mind rich gifts wax poor when givers prove unkind.
As became clear in our conversation, as well as certainly in their performances, these two had thoroughly explored these iconic figures, and I was so happy that conversations are part of this body of work. Derek?
There's a scene where Hamlet is talking madly with Polonius. He says, Polonius asks, "Do you know me, sir?" And he says, "Excellent, well, you are a fishmonger." And it sounds like a funny line, especially nowadays in our vernacular, that it's about he sells fish. And, like, clearly Hamlet's crazy because he's saying he sells fish. But back then, it was a slang term that meant pimp.
Mm-hmm.
So he's accusing Polonius of pimping out his daughter for his own benefit. Because if we keep Hamlet happy, then we don't have to worry about anything happening to Claudius, kind of thing. So Polonius is just a selfish guy, I think. He's always vying for more power and making a lot of mistakes along the way and doing some very shady things the whole time. And the Gertrude's closet of it all, which is an interesting thing to be doing. But yeah, he's guilty of a lot of things, and I think he's just overtaken by his own loyalty to his friend Claudius, and that he's just willing to do whatever he can to make that guy happy so he can better himself in society, or whatever he's trying to do, really. I haven't studied Polonius a whole lot.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, yeah, as characters go, it's kind of, I mean, and also, that mirrors, Hamlet sending, Ophelia to a nunnery. The vernacular of the time would potentially, refer to a brothel.
Yeah, and and I've I looked at each line individually as I was going about it for my interpretation of Hamlet. And I had written in my script a note next to a lot of the lines in the Ophelia scene. I had said, if I can't have her, ...
Mm-hmm.
And I had to figure out if Hamlet means literally go to a nunnery so I know you'll be pure and safe,
Mm-hmm.
or if it is go to a brothel. And I played it off, or at least I tried to play it off, that it is a literal nunnery, and that he's telling her to go be safe somewhere.
Okay.
And that's why he's so broken over it. It's not just that they're breaking up and stuff like that, because he's very weirdly cordial and crazy with her in the exact next scene. It's very bipolar.
Phenomenal. Oh, wow. Thank you for that exploration. And Shotzi?
I think every actor naturally does this, but you try to find your own characteristics in your characters. And the thing that I really could relate to with Ophelia, because she is one of the, I would say, quote, like, weaker women characters in Shakespeare, and I think that is on purpose. I don't think it was
she does seem more defined by negative space than anything else.
And in my mind, she's so much of a people pleaser that she just kind of gets lost in who she is, and then she's confused, and then the only thing she knows how and what to do is to try to make everyone happy. And when that starts not happening and not happening and not happening, then she just totally loses it.
I don't have a place in this world.
Right.
And
yeah.
No, that's a solid approach on that character.
Yeah, because, Juan and I had the conversation. Juan played Polonius, my father, and he was like, I'm trying to understand, like, why, in your opinion, like, why does Ophelia lose, like, why does she go mad when her father dies? Her father's not nice to her. Like, he just barks orders at her. He doesn't really treat her nice. He uses her to gain
information.
I mean, Ophelia really is more of an object to everybody than a person, because everybody uses her in some way, shape, or form throughout the show. And I said, because I had to think about it and I had to justify why she gets so devastated by her father's death. And I said to Polonius, Juan, I think, in my opinion, she doesn't know love any other way other than people using her. She thinks that's what love is.
Truly wonderful. So glad both of you could be part of this. Check out their full interviews. That's episode 95 from last summer, Dead for a Ducat. Thank you both so much. Then, for episode 100 earlier this year, my sister and I had a good chat about shows we've both watched growing up, shows she turned me on to, and some of what I contend have been her contributions to what you've all been listening to over the years.
What got you into Buffy? Because you got me into Buffy, so I was kind of like, how did you find her?
Well, I think I was the right age, kind of target demographic of that show. So, I probably got plastered in the face with advertising. But, I watched a couple episodes and I was hooked. Mm-hmm. Because it was so, I think everybody my age has seen the Buffy the Vampire Slayer movie. And it wasn't, it's, now it's kind of a cult classic. It's very campy and it's very, kitschy and whatever. But the show was so much more different and I think so much more relatable to, people of that age, that late teens, early 20s. And, even though, sure, it was about them, killing vampires and demons and whatever, but there were some very relatable things in that show. And especially as the seasons went on, they dealt with some pretty real stuff. And also, who doesn't love a hot superhero chick that kills vampires? So
takes the edge off.
There's a lot of likable things about this show.
If you hadn't gotten me into Buffy, I might not have ever met my podcaster friend in DC and started my little podcast at the Minot Daily News, and then started this one because I missed commenting on shows. But 100 episodes later, what the hell? No,
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm out here doing. I'm just out here making connections. I'm just out here building the communities.
It is great.
And if you'll indulge me celebrating the conversations that have been part of this project 8 years into this, I feel it's worth making a couple of callbacks here. First, my most recent conversation with Mark in June of last year, when we also explored the deep, dark origins of this project.
Oh, I was just going to say, hearkening back to something that you had mentioned, that if production hadn't gone so badly, if we hadn't had a frankly inept director, and that's a hill I'm going to die on. She was terrible. Mm-hmm. If Rutger Hauer hadn't been, much as I love him, a little miscast for this, and if Donald Sutherland hadn't been a bit of a jerk and rewritten things, and if it all just hadn't gone so badly, Joss may have never felt the need to keep it moving and do something else with the property. He may have never been offered the chance by WB to do that. He might have never gone into TV because he had wanted to do movies. Mm-hmm. We might never have had Buffy the Vampire Slayer. We might never have had Angel or Firefly. And you and I might never have met.
I really am very happy that Donald Sutherland was such a diva.
I know, right?
I wouldn't necessarily, because you got me into podcasting. So, I mean, it was, Girl with Geek Life made me think, I have a column every week. I could probably, put something out there. And, I feel like, 7 years later on this, going through just, my media collection and having, I feel like this has given me a chance to reconnect with people and reconnect with my media collection and just go through it and get to talk about stuff that I love. And, if we hadn't met, I probably wouldn't be doing this. And, I don't know. Maybe I'd have already retired to the south of France for all of the wonderful, all the wonderful experiences I might have had. Except that I was holed up in a room talking about it. But, honestly, although there are lots of indications that we are in dumbest timeline, and they are many, I am happy that we got to connect. So, absolutely, Mark, thank you. And closing out with a comment from the first conversation we had as part of this effort from episode 47 in May of 2019.
Well, I'm just going to decide how spoilery I care to be. Right. Because there's some stuff that is just going to have emotional impact that people should experience on the screen. I've always felt that spoilers on a podcast is something like, okay, well, you can listen to me talk about it, but it's going to have just the barest shadow of the experience of watching the thing. But sometimes the bare experience of watching the thing is better if you didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
So I do try to not completely ruin things for people.
By the way, spoilers on a podcast was the less successful sequel to Snakes on a Plane, but may have had that wrong in my notes. Sorry.
So awesome, and thank you. Thank all of you so much. You've improved the show. You've improved my life in ways it's hard even to put entirely into words, but it's all part of celebrating the storytelling we've all enjoyed and been part of over the years. Flashes of brilliance and, yes, silliness reflected in all of us, and I'm so happy to have been part of curating, archiving, and sharing that as well. Thank you, and of course, thank you all for listening and for checking out my video cataloging project. You can check out my catalog listing along with audio links at VideoFuzzy.blogspot.com. For past episodes, add, subscribe, or follow VideoFuzzy wherever you podcast, and if you get a chance, check out my VideoFuzzy the soundtrack entries as well. Feedback is always appreciated. You can contact me through my blog or podcast sites via email to tjaman1970@yahoo.com or through my VideoFuzzy pages on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. For VideoFuzzy, I'm Terry J. Aman. Happy viewing. It might be amazing, it might just be scuzzy. We'll find it together on VideoFuzzy.
VideoFuzzy.
Excelsior.